Hello. How is everybody today? Did we all made it? Wonderful. I love your hearts, Michelle. Those are fantastic. So I am BJ Hensley, the Director of Marketing here at Paizo, and today we are all going to be talking about romance on our panel, Romancing the Tome. Each of us has a different area of expertise in writing or running games for romance, and we're just going to have some fun chat about how you can bring romance into your game safely and make life a little bit more enjoyable. I want to start out by introducing everybody, and they can tell us a little bit about what they've worked on. I've spent a lot of time over the years working on adding bits of romance here and there. I did some work on Blue Rose, and I have a great deal of experience running games and playing in games with romance in them. I'm going to pass it over to Rigby, who can tell us a little bit about what they do.
Hi, I'm Rigby Bendele. I'm a longtime freelance contributor to the Pathfinder and Starfinder games, and I wrote the relationship subsystems that appeared in the NPC core.
Awesome. How about you, Michelle?
Hi, I'm Michelle. I am a developer on the Pathfinder narrative team, and I wrote all of pretty much Monster Match.
I'm so excited for that game. You have no idea. It's going to be amazing, and I can't wait to hear you tell us about it a little bit later on. Eleanor, how about you?
Hi, I'm Eleanor Ferron. I am a senior Pathfinder developer on the Rules and Lore team, and I'm just the wardrobe department, but y'all invited me here.
That's the reason we have this beautiful art behind me.
No, the artists are the reason we have this beautiful art behind you.
Wardrobe is important.
It is. It is.
Well, yeah, without wardrobing and the help of someone to put in those art orders, we would not have the art that we do today. There is a fantastic example of a wonderful piece of art from our upcoming game Monster Match, which we're all very excited for. I'm sure that Michelle can tell us a little bit more about who that person is, maybe
Michelle, did you sneak in that vampire? Because I did not put that in the panel slides.
I think I might have. The vampire is, oh gosh, I don't remember all of their little stats and things, but if I remember correctly, they are high on the hedonism, I think. Like, just very indulgent, very cool guy. You know,
very indulgent, very Resand sort of vibe going on there. Yeah, I can see that. So if anybody's an ACOSAR fan, that was a reference really outside of our industry, but he does give that vibe. So before we dive in too much, I know that Rigby and all of us thought it would be very important to talk about consent. We're not going to get too dicey or MA in our panel here, but it is really important that anytime that you are including romance in your game or in your date night or anything like that, that you make sure consent is key. Rigby, did you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, and in fact, I wrote quite a bit in the NPC core relationship subsystem about managing consent, because when it comes towards romance, consent has some additional context that I think is really important for a tabletop system. In that it has much more to do with the trust level of the group and what everybody's play experience is that they're looking for. I've definitely been in games where I've had romance arcs sort of sprung on me that I was not interested in and was really like, the GM was trying to flirt with me. But I've also had games. Yeah. I also was once in a game where everybody but me and my partner were dating the DM, and we did not know this until several months in, and that was a weird experience as well.
Oh my goodness.
So I think one of the things that's really important is having open conversations with your group ahead of time, and also being really aware of bleed. Bleed is a concept that really came out of Nordic LARP. That is just where the differences between you as a person and your character can get sort of messy. Like, it's not always bad. Like, I definitely started flirting with my now spouse via like tabletop games, and then that evolved into us getting married, years down the road.
Games bring people together, am I right?
It does. It does. But if you're flirting with somebody that you're not that interested in flirting with, even in a tabletop game, it can be kind of weird I'm in a
It
really
should never
long
be forced like that. That is true. You should always have consent.
yeah,
I think it's important to note that if you're planning in a group to have romance, like a big
yeah,
group, that it should be kept, very PG, and
yeah,
consent should be gotten from everybody at the table, certainly.
yeah. My favorite like detail is that in my longest running campaign, my sister's the GM, so I've never done any romance in that game because it would
Oh
be just
yeah.
too weird.
Yeah, I
Um,
GM for my children a lot, so you can definitely bet there is no romance in that game. They're just gonna have to, take that to a
yeah.
different table. That's not happening there.
But I think if a group's totally into it, it's fantastic to include because everybody loves characters and like relationships that evolve over time. And it's so cool to have like, that person that your character met in like the inn back in like the very start of the adventure now is very important to them later on, whether that's through like a romance arc or just through other types of relationships. Like I think investing in relationships in a campaign makes the world feel so much more alive.
Yes, I absolutely agree. I think it's really nice too sometimes, like when you start out and you have your consent forms for your game, because a lot of people do those, just asking, are you okay for minor romance arcs? Are you okay if, the man at the bar flirts with you or something like that is important, because many groups are
Mhm.
actually just fine and okay and happy to have that, and some are not. And then taking it a little bit deeper, if you're going to go on to an even more in-depth route, that is definitely something you should discuss and make sure everybody is comfortable at the table. Michelle, did you have anything to add to the consent conversation?
Um, Nothing particularly. I did want to note that some safety sheets that I've used before, they do have a separate section that says romance with
Yes.
PCs, yes or no, romance with NPCs, yes or no. And that's been really helpful for my groups because some people are interested in one type of romance, but not the other. Like,
Hmm.
and so it's really useful to just narrow those things down and be like, oh,
It
okay,
is.
because even when you both want a romance, sometimes you don't want the same thing out of that romance.
That is 100% true, and that's really important to note. And I think too, there's a lot of times, I know for many people, when they come to the table, a lot of couples will join games, and we kind of get into that where couples will automatically decide, oh, my characters are in a romantic relationship together. And I think that's wonderful and beautiful and a great way to continue your relationship. But it is important that you make sure you're getting the consent of not only your GM but also your fellow players to ensure that they're okay with you bringing your romance into the game and into your characters. Eleanor, did you have anything to add?
Um, I told you I'm the wardrobe department, but I do think it is also important to have a conversation about how in depth you want to go with these romances.
Agreed.
Certainly, like our NPC core gets close to the sort of like a Stardew Valley system, which is not an insult. It is actually
I
I think
love
a good,
Stardew Valley.
but it's you don't have to get too in depth in the role playing. I know back when I was in college, I played with somebody who was just like pretend I care to the GM about the relationship their character was in. And that's valid. It's valid.
That's
You don't
valid. It's valid.
you can just go over and be like, "Yeah, I'm gonna run up and I'm gonna give Sebastian some kind of goth jewelry, and then we're gonna have a cutscene maybe every couple of heart events." And
Yeah,
that's perfectly valid. And it might be a good way to dip your toes in if you're not necessarily comfortable with a very more in-depth or intimate role play with somebody else at the
exactly.
table.
Well, and I think one thing of note, and then we'll see what Michelle has to say about it, is one of the things that I've seen on where you're having group romance, and we'll talk a little bit more about non-group here in a little bit, but the group romance aspect on those sheets of consent is they have ratings much like TV. Do you want to keep it PG? Is PG-13 okay? Are we okay with a little rated R? I've never seen a sheet that has anything above that. I wouldn't want to play in that game, but that is again
I'm
between
sure
you
it
and your
exists.
GM. I'm sure it does. I'm sure it does. And I think that's, again, between you and your GM. Michelle, what did you have to say?
Oh, I was gonna say that Emily Care Boss's romance trilogy games, they have
Yes.
a kind of like rating thing where you can
Hmm.
go through from chaste to explicit, and it has
Yes,
like
they do.
lists all these different and describes like this is how in depth we're going to get about romance, and it's a
That's a great
really great
example.
rating system.
It is, and that's a great example. I'd actually forgotten about that. Thank you for bringing it up.
And
Rigby?
also to go back about what Eleanor was saying about like the relationship subsystems being much more Stardew Valley-esque, like you're going to do some stuff and then get some payoff. That was really purposeful when I was thinking about designing it, because when I was thinking about what a game wants out of a romance subsystem, it is often something that allows you to have like much more of a mechanical, like, oh, I found my NPC's favorite, soda that you can only buy in Absalom, and I brought it back to them
Yes.
across the inner sea, where the role play tends to come out much more naturally, and people kind of want the game to get out of the way when it comes to the role play, but would like the game to help structure some of the longer term, like, well, what does it mean for our relationship to evolve? Because I can sit down and I can role play with people all day long, and I don't need dice to tell me what I'm doing there. But when it comes towards mechanically, what is having a lifelong bond, or a spouse, or a sworn sibling, like, what does that mean?
Yeah.
That is where the payoff comes in.
So years ago, I wrote a thing, a bit blurb, I suppose, in a product that sort of tied some siblings together in that way. And I think you can take that and easily develop that into a concept that works with partners, and having like, look, if I've been with my partner 20 years and we have a specific bond, maybe I get an extra something in communicating with them. Maybe you get some bonuses to when you're across the battlefield and you look at your spouse and your spouse knows they're supposed to duck, right? Like I feel like as someone who has been with the same person for a long time, that is actual almost telepathic communication that could easily translate.
Okay,
Or
but
like when you're
where's the ability where your spouse won't listen to you when you tell him to duck because he's stubborn like that?
yeah, and likewise, if you have like a childhood bestie where you like just share a look and you both know that you're going to be debriefing the conversation you're in for like the next 10 minutes over like apps afterwards, like that is the type of thing that I think like the long-term relationship investment really pays off.
Agreed. Yeah, absolutely. And I think I would love to see somebody write an actual I've always meant to, but I've never found time. And all the many things I've written for over the years, I've always meant to write a couple class, right? And I've never found time, but I would love if somebody else would, because I really think that there's a lot that could be played on in having a class where if you both take this class, you work together, or some kind of, archetype or whatever, where you work together as a couple to make things happen in the game. So I think from a design perspective, that can be a lot of fun. I've done it at home, but I've never published it. It's very enjoyable. Eleanor, have you ever worked on any romance classes or romance books outside of the wonderful costuming for Monster Match?
we
Totally
do.
fair.
We did work on in rival academies. There's also a section for running the academic convocation, and of course, since it's a
There you
bunch of
go.
college students smushed together in one spot, there's going to be romance probably.
That's what I was thinking as I was like, I thought that I had seen some romance art, and that I didn't want to call it out just in case I wasn't sure what you were ready to talk about. So,
I
um,
so I did. There's one piece of art that I did order that's very popular.
it is.
I gave like the keyword I believe I gave for Rue was anything about drama. Let's see if that gets us on the
Oh, so
no,
much wonderful art.
that one, yes.
I
it's
love
it,
it.
uh
That's great.
it sort of
Beautiful.
spawned a fan following, but yeah. um romance, it's fun.
Romance is fun, exactly.
I'm we always want to be cautious about game mechanics about romance because nobody wants to to character optimize their relationships.
Fair enough.
Says you.
I mean, yeah, I mean, who says nobody? I don't know.
There is a game where having the largest polykill gives you the most power. I do not believe it is Pathfinder 2,
It is not
but
Pathfinder 2,
I
I don't think.
would be happy to see somebody write that.
That's amazing. That's
Oh,
amazing.
somebody's asking to bring that picture back. Can we get the picture back?
Can we
for
get
them?
the picture back? There we go. That is really a truly fantastic image, honestly. I think that's great. I really want to know what the woman in the window is thinking. I'm
There's actually
desperately.
There's a follow-up image in another Lost Omens book. I'm trying to remember which one. But we don't have that picture queued up for this panel, so you're just going to have to go out and buy the Lost Omens book.
Oh, that one's so funny. It's so good.
There you go, folks. You got to go out and buy this book so we know what is happening with the picture. I'm not allowed to tell you, so you heard it here. So let's talk a little bit about Monster Match while we have our wonderful Michelle Kim here. I'd love to know, how did you decide which monsters to put in Monster Match? Like, how did you make that decision?
Ooh, we wanted a mix of monsters that were a bit more humanoid, as well as monsters who are just weird and kind of freaky. So we've got monsters like our dear Glub, the gelatinous ooze.
We love Glub.
Glub is truly amazing.
Glub is a shoot, I can't remember. Iridescent ooze? Rainbow ooze? Something like that. But yeah, and then we've got our more humanoid ones like the angel behind me, succubus, vampire. So there's kind of a mix for everyone. You know, if you're not into fur and claws, then there's somebody for you. But if you are into fur and claws,
yeah, there we go.
Where are my fur and claws? I'm sorry, I need to see this now.
on the cover, but
we did not put the Sphinx in our slides, unfortunately.
rude.
But if you look on Blue Sky, somebody did. Oh, there we go.
I'm sure
there's
we
your
have
fur
a way
and
to
claws.
thank for that. That is amazing. I love it. I love it.
Isn't
I love
she
the
just
colors.
so luxurious?
Dang, she's just absolute luxury personified.
Like, hands up in chat, who would date the Sphinx? Can we get a wood in chat?
There we go. I love that. So is there any process? Like, did y'all just sit around and be like, hey, who would you like to date? Or did you like take
I
Was there a
basically
poll?
got to pick everybody. So I just went through all the Pathfinder monsters that I could. I was just scrolling through Monster Core, and then some of them were a little too similar to each other, so we would switch those out. But I got to choose pretty much all of them. So if there's someone who's missing in there,
it's Michelle's fault.
yeah,
and it's Michelle's fault that I was stuck with a sexy tree to order art of.
Hey, you volunteered that art of a sexy tree.
I did, and I was told my tree was too sexy.
Your tree was too sexy? Oh dear. Oh dear.
Yeah, if you don't find the tree in Monster Match sexy enough, it's because my tree was rejected for being too sexy.
Aww. Too sexy for your tree. Okay. That's amazing. So when you're looking at a game like Monster Match, how do you think you have that conversation with your friends if you're like, oh, I just got this amazing game I'm super excited about and I want to play it? Like, what would each of you respectively do if you wanted your game group to play Monster Match? Like me, I'm pretty open and squirrel like, and I just be like, I got things and it's really cool and we're all gonna play it. But and everybody would probably be okay with that. But like, you know,
I've got the kind of friend group that it sort of sells itself. I don't know about everybody else in this room, but that may also be the case.
Yeah, I think my friend group definitely sells itself.
The day that Monster Match was announced, my long-running Bloodlords campaign had just started like ranking all the villains on a smash or pass scale, so I think we were already prepared for the Monster Match reveal.
I believe that there was a panel earlier in PaizoCon that involved a very hot daddy demon that we're being told we're not allowed to date. So I feel like maybe the Pathfinder community might be on board.
I think there's some crossover between the Pathfinder community and the novel community. I don't know if y'all are on Book Talk, but I'm pretty sure daddy demons are pretty popular right now. Anything, shadow or morally gray.
That's
Yeah.
not a daddy demon. That's a sphinx.
Yeah, that's a sphinx. We got our sphinx there. See, yeah, that definitely would be popular on Book Talk.
Unfortunately, he showed up after the art for Monster Match was ordered, but if Monster Match sells very well, we could do an expansion.
An expansion. There you go. That's it. Everybody go buy Monster Match right now because we need this expansion. 100%.
Oh, I'm being told he's a devil? Sorry. I'm pretty sure only demons and devils care about that, but
But it's important. So now we know. That's really funny.
It's like in academia where you accidentally call somebody an associate professor instead of an assistant professor, or vice versa. People are very into their titles.
I'm pretty sure that some academics I know would love the comparison between them and hell, and I don't mean that in an ironic sense.
Funny. So somebody wants to know, will there be a Starfinder version of Monster Match in the future? That's
if
a great
it
question.
does well,
I don't know.
If it does well, we could totally do that. Aliens.
So again, buy this game so we can have even more amazing games just like it. I love that. So I know we've talked a lot about our groups and consent in our groups. One of the things that I think can be problematic for romance and RPGs, and we've talked a lot about the positives and how fun it can be, is when having a romantic partner at the table, in character specifically, adds potential drama. Like what do you, as gamers, as GMs, how do you handle when that adds potential drama? And that can be good, it can be something to play off from, the perspective of part of the game. But sometimes, anytime there is romantic entanglements, there is always at least a little bit of friction here or there. So how do you think that's best should be handled at the table? Eleanor, any ideas?
Oh, you're asking the wrong person.
Fair. How about you, Michelle?
I think everything comes down to communication. Like I have a regular group I game with. We play a lot of Good Society, a Jane Austen RPG, which is very romance forward in a lot of ways. And so when we get into romance, there's definitely like the game is structured so that everyone is kind of clashing in what they want. So we will take a lot of pauses and be like, hey, I'm thinking of doing this thing. Is that okay? And so we have a lot of above board talk. And, it's not as immersive and all that. But ultimately, if your immersion is going to make it less fun for people, it's not really worth it.
I think that's true. Yeah, I think that's very true. Rigby, how about you?
Yeah, I also think, again, communication is key, but so is like knowing how to read the room and know when to ask for a check-in.
Yes.
If you're doing a lot of like romance RP and let's say you're playing with a couple and you can tell that every time a one of the members of the couple's like character gets flirted with, like the other member, like the other part of the couple, like sort of like seizes up, like that is maybe not just check in with the person who's in the RP, but also check in with the other person and be like, what's going on here? Are you okay with this? Do you need to have a talk with your partner about, how you want to handle this?
Right.
And to, I think in my games, I have different games that I have different groups that I have different levels of trust with. Like the group that my sister runs, we've been playing together for almost a decade now. Very high level of trust there because we also know each other quite well outside of the game. But then I have some groups that I play with where it's just like people I've met for the first time or people who I'm only like gaming in the group
harder.
with.
Yeah.
And so it's like, how much do I want to like push boundaries, like not in a anti-consent way, but sort of in a, oh, this person has mentioned that they're interested in this. Like, how much do I want to introduce this as like, oh, do we want to do this thing next? And for me, yes, along with Michelle, it's like a lot of above the table conversation and a lot of like explicit negotiation of what are you thinking about this? Where do you think this might go? And I find that the more communication that I do up front, the less likely there is to have drama on the back end. And I know a lot of this because I used to do a lot of LARPing, and the LARPing community that I was in was not very good about like pre-negotiation up front. And so you would then have a lot of communication afterwards, but it would be often like very upset people messaging you on, you know, the days of Facebook Messenger. And so I think as much as sometimes people think that it'll be awkward to have a conversation like, you know, during a game pause or, you know, during a check-in, it's way more awkward to have that conversation after you've accidentally like stepped into it.
I agree. Yeah. Well, and I think for me, I would give the advice that when you are running any game, and this advice works with children, it works with everybody at the table, and it works in romance. Sometimes we need brain breaks, right? So if you see that there's a lot of tension in your table, it's okay to say, "Hey, let's take a snack break and make sure that we're all on the same page." It's okay to just communicate, be open, be honest, and communicate. And I think that a lot of the drama where if you have, I've had experiences in the past where we've had couple characters where a particular set of couple, you know, were causing a little bit more drama than anybody really wanted in the game. And so, like you said, when you start getting those messages, I think you just have to be able to openly sit down and be like, hey, this is a problem we're having. How can we fix this? I mean, if we can't communicate, then obviously maybe we shouldn't be romancing at the table to begin with. So communication is definitely key there.
And I also think it's pretty important to do check-ins after the session if tensions have gotten high, if something
100%.
feels like it is going to come up again, just so that way you can have a conversation where people are in a calmer space who might be more receptive to hearing, you know, hey, there's a lot of conflict going on between you and this other player, or what you want from the game doesn't seem to be what everybody else wants from the game, where you can have the conversation where people are able to be their best selves rather than like in a very reactive space where they're
that's why the brain breaks. Yeah, taking that brain break and coming back to it, being like, okay, Lena, let's talk about that now that we've had a snack and some time to calm down. That's really very important. And I think too, one thing to note is just that not everybody works well in group conversation. Not everybody is going to be able to bring their concerns to the group. So as a GM, it is our job to look around, and if we're noticing that there might be some tension there, to go to maybe that person one-on-one and be like, hey, can I help you? Can I facilitate this being more comfortable for you? Are you truly okay? So it's important to look out for those things at your table, because again, not everybody is able to strongly communicate. And some people are. Some people will be like, hey, this is a problem, right? You're always going to have the stronger and then the quieter personality. So you do have to account for that a little bit. So have any of you ever built NPCs specifically for player characters to romance? And if you have, how is that different from spontaneous romance at the table? Anybody?
Well, when you say specifically, the first thing I feel like you're going to learn is that they're going to go for the person you did not expect them to go to. So the first lesson about building NPCs is just to assume that somebody's going to.
Yes.
Everyone that you make is potential romance
potentially
fodder.
Romance for the bard.
And therefore they should all be hot. Because players will pay more attention to an NPC that is hot than to one that is not.
Fair enough.
Yeah, in fact, like once I was running a Monster Hearts game and I made an NPC that was specifically supposed to be like the worst person you knew in high school, and by the end they were like, we're redeeming Frank. Frank is now going to be part of our friend group, and you know, one of them was like, we're gonna date Frank, and I was like, okay, did not expect this to be where we were going. And on the other hand, they like, you know, the very like cool, you know, like specifically micro targeted at one of my players to have like another NPC to bounce off of, whether it be romantic or just like, oh, you're really into like doing DIY micro controller computer mods. Here's a character that's into that. Just did not get any traction. So again, yes, it is the characters you don't expect are the ones that they'll connect to, and the characters that you do expect, they're like, that's cool.
Yeah, I find that when I create just shallow characters that I've plucked a name out of air, those are the ones people want to be interested in. It's never the ones I put the time into, you know?
But of course, they can smell
Yeah.
it.
It's like they know. They're like, oh, I saw her glance at that book where she puts all those names in there just when she needs one. So this is the one we're going to ask 97 questions about.
It's like life.
It is very much like life. So Murder
Yes.
Squid would like to ask us, are there rules for polycules in Monster Match or NPC Core?
I did suggest a bardcore mode for a monster match, but I do not believe we had
Bardcore?
space to put it in, where instead of trying to romance one monster and be the first to propose, you compete to see how many monsters you can seduce and put into your polycule. But again, I do not believe we actually end up with space to do that, so that can just be your Paizo endorsed little house rule when you buy Monster Match
There you
and
go.
for more copies for all your friends.
That's amazing.
In terms of NPC core, so the relationship subsystem in NPC core is both explicitly designed not to be exclusive. So you can't, like, you're not just like, oh, I have one relationship with someone and that's the only person I can build the strongest relationship with. In part because I was also explicitly designing the relationship subsystem to try to capture a wide range of types of relationships someone might have over the course of their life. Like, I find it really important to not just focus on like romance as like the most, you know, deep, strongest possible relationship you can ever have. So, you know, you could use it for your grad school rival, which I may or may not still have a deep rivalry with my grad school rival. But you could also use it for multiple partners, for example. There are also ways with the relationship subsystem to use like a party wide relationship. So with that, I was really designing in the mind of like, you know, you're the same waitress at the inn that you go to after every time. If you're constantly, you know, stiffing them on their tip, they're not going to like you very much when you walk in the door. But if you're constantly coming in and being like, you know, we just came out of the ruins and here's, you know, a magic sword for you, and they're like, oh yes, then that relationship builds over time. And so while polycules were not explicitly designed, there's definitely room in there for them to be adapted to a polycule, and also for an individual PC to have multiple relationships that have an equal amount of intensity. There is some inherent tension in the system where I very specifically included some rules around like what relationship decay would look like. Whereas very much like if you're explicitly choosing not to spend time, or like, you know, it's not like, oh, you were off in a adventure and therefore you come back and your partner doesn't like you that much. That isn't what it's meant for, but it's meant to be like, oh, if you've decided not to spend time with this relationship, it will also decay over time. And so I tried to be really mindful about both including tools where people can mimic aspects of relationships that they really care about without necessarily forcing people into like, well, mechanically you weren't able to, you know, go, you know, collect an owlbear cub for your, you know, girlfriend and therefore she's going to break up with you. That's what I was trying to avoid without players explicitly opting into and wanting to pursue that as a part of their game.
Right. Well, and I mean, like I know you mentioned earlier about like sort of the Stardew Valley-esque system for relationships that happen in there. So like, what was your thought process? Like, how did the brainstorming and writing work while you were like, and here are the, you know, the heart scenes? Like, how did that play out?
So I started by doing a bunch of different, like, just brainstorming of like, how could a relationship subsystem function within a tabletop game? And some of them, you know, could be really granular where you're like collecting points and going and like, you know, trying to maximize the number of points, which would be, in my opinion, probably way too like focused on like minutia and not necessarily focused on what was important. And so when I designed it, I ended up going towards like sort of a favor and flub situation where there are different types of favors that you could do, or, you know, different ways that you could insult somebody that you're having a relationship with. And then went through and sort of created like a, what would I consider, you know, the type of like favor that would really impress somebody or otherwise like help cement a relationship. And then which would be the type of insults where, like, you know, if it happened to me and my friend was doing this, I would be like, whoa, actually, like, you know, I don't think that I want to keep investing in spending time with this person.
Yeah.
And the reason why I went towards sort of like insults and favors is because I think that the non-mechanical but more like almost milestone XP sort of vibe, where we're not necessarily tracking exact numbers, like how much have you spent on this person, like you've spent your 600 gold piece, you're now able to get married, like that doesn't seem as fun. But for example, one of the ways to, you know, create the lifelong, the highest level relationship is to like make a vow, like to protect the other person's life, where it becomes these moments where these like natural, like I really wanted to match what might naturally be coming up in role play with potential like ideas to spark like GM ideas of like, oh, how could I make this happen? So, you know, one of the ideas in there for a favor is to, you know, go complete a quest that involves like a moderate combat encounter, where for me I'm thinking, oh, you know, if, you know, the waitress at the inn that you love is like, oh no, my, you know, my favorite necklace was stolen by a seagull or stolen by a crow, and then you have to go and get it back. That becomes like a way that sparks like a little mini adventure where you're still able to engage with the rest of the system while also feeling very meaningful towards that relationship. And I hope that GMs use it and create ideas that feel very personalized and connect with that player and like the player's goal and the PC's goal, and really contextualize it in the world, rather than necessarily be just like aha, I have found, you know, whatever object that is on the character's like favorites list. But it could also be that, like, again, I mentioned, you know, if you're an adventurer and you're traveling across nations and you're like, oh, I'm making sure to stop and you know, in a city that this person has never been in and get them a perfect souvenir that, you know, is to their taste, that should have payoff, as opposed to just sort of feeling like it's checking a box of like, okay, gave them a 50 gold piece item.
I do feel like trying to get a necklace back from a seagull is way more than a moderate combat encounter.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. That sounds like really, really difficult. I think I would struggle with that.
The
Like,
light spoon for that.
yeah, that's I think that should be the hard event with the feather. I don't know if y'all played like Rune Factory or Harvest Moon, but I think you have to get a feather back then to propose. That seems like that would be proposal worthy hard event. So someone in the audience wants to know, what are our favorite game systems for campaigns with romance? And if you have other systems that you enjoy, have you ever ported those rules to another system? So, like, I know for example, I'm a really big fan of Blue Rose. You know, that's a talented group of people over there at Green Running that put that together. It's a great. But I have certainly used things from that book in my Pathfinder campaigns, for example. How about you, Michelle? Do you have a favorite game system that does romance?
So as I mentioned earlier, I play a ton of Good Society. That game is really great with romance, especially because it is GM-less. You do have a facilitator sometimes to help with the rules stuff, but basically it's just full-on collaborative storytelling. So so it really encourages that above board conversation with other players. And there is a mechanic in it called resolve tokens, where you're basically paying this little mechanical like narrative tug to affect the story, and you can pay it to other characters to make bad things happen to them.
Oh,
and like negotiate. So like, hey, I'll give you a resolve token if you trip and fall on your face in front of your crush. Like stuff like that. So it has become a running joke that no matter what game we're playing, my friends and I will always be like, resolve token.
I think sometimes things just become the name of something. You know, like everybody calls tissues Kleenexes no matter what sort of scenario. In our game, it's bennies. it doesn't matter if I'm playing Pathfinder or Starfinder or Savage Worlds or whatever it is. Everybody's like, wait, no, I need a Benny. I need to have one. I need to have a duo or whatever. So it's just the names that stick, right? And it does. You just take those over to campaigns no matter where you are.
Yeah.
How about you,
And
Rigby?
I mentioned this before, but my friend group has played a lot of Monster Hearts, which is a Powered by the Apocalypse game that where all the characters are supernatural creatures that are having to hide that while in high school. It explicitly plays with like a lot of themes around queerness, and as my friend group is very queer, we spend a lot of time enjoying RPing. Like, what if we were in high school and in the closet again? Now that we're all out of high school and no longer in the closet. And we also all enjoy quite a bit of terrible CW TV shows, and that game does a great job of really leaning into that. And one of the things that I like about that game, similar to the Good Society's Resolve tokens, is that relationships between characters and between NPCs use what are called strings, and strings are ways in which like characters have, some sort of pull over you. It can either be like a romantic string, or it could also be like the person who's living rent free in your head because you hate them that much. It sort of like looks at intensity of relationship rather than, is this a positive or negative relationship that you have with them. And it is also to the point where strings are also often offered to other players or NPCs to encourage them to do something. So often if you accept a string, you'll get like a bonus on a roll, or it'll be easier for you to do something. And so we've also started adapting this similarly to our Pathfinder games, where we use hero points as strings at times, where it's like, hey, as a GM, I will hold out my hand and I'll be like, you can have a hero point if you allow yourself to like go off on this NPC, or if you allow yourself to fall for like what is very clearly a trick, because it encourages a player to lean into a bad decision that their PC might make, but they might avoid because they're like, oh, I don't want the gameplay consequence.
Kind of a growth experience there,
Yeah, and it's a way to like have people feel good about making the decision that is probably not mechanically the best, but leads to a more interesting story.
Yeah, that's fair. So I have a question myself for Eleanor, because I want to know how you got about, like, how did you become the costume designer for our monsters? Like, what how did that happen? Were they just like, I think Eleanor designs the best romance ever. Here, Monster Match is costume design is for you. Like, how did that
For some
happen?
reason, the rules and lore department and a couple of other people have decided that I do good art orders. I'm not sure
You do.
why.
I agree. I agree. You do fantastic art orders.
Well, you'll have to explain why you think that. What? Daddy Devil again?
Showing you examples of how amazing your art orders are, because clearly
So
you do
anyway, Joe
good.
showed up and was just like, "Hey, want to do some art orders?" I don't see why they are necessarily better than other people on the team, but I have gotten a reputation for some reason.
You
So,
definitely have an eye for detail for things like that. So it seems like the clothing, like these, like what was the art order for this guy? Like, he's amazing and his clothes are on point. Were you like, and I need it to have these specific doodads, or like how did you get this? How do I put that out
I
there
wish I
to
could.
an
I
artist?
wish I had the art order in front of me. Well, actually, I might. Let me see if it's on my computer. No, it's not. I organized and now I don't have it for you. But
Oh my
I
God.
definitely, in the case of the vampire, I had a bit of an easy shorthand because I asked for the most vampiric clothing ever. So,
That's fair. That's fair.
give me the cape, give me the frilly shirt, give me the vest, give me the tight leather black riding boots. And of course, he needs to have a glass of wine because, well, a glass of a red fluid, because there are about 50
Exactly.
vampire memes, all of which involve a glass of red fluid for him to fling across while asking philosophical questions, or
That's
perhaps
right.
make comments about never drinking wine.
But the fact that you knew that and added, I think that's why you're so good at ordering art, because those little details that you put in there make the image, because you didn't just say, "Oh, I'd like a hot vampire," right? You gave specific instructions, and adding those small elements like that glass of red fluid are probably integral to why you end up with such good output on your images. So
Well,
congratulations to you for that.
it's definitely, I could ask for a hot vampire, and depending on the artists I could get something amazing.
I
Um,
I actually don't know what this image is, the
that is
elephant, and
a
now
that
I
is a
want to
fire
know.
giant.
Oh, it makes sense. Yeah.
He's
Okay.
never been on a date before. Somebody please help him.
I
Uh,
mean, I'm there for his pet elephant for sure. I mean, that's pretty amazing. I
yeah,
love that.
because people go wild for somebody who has a cute pet. But
Mhm.
a
Mhm.
dog in his case would be an extremely toy breed. So we we gave
Oh,
him a pet
yeah.
mammoth.
Maybe like in his little shirt pocket, just have like a golden retriever peeking out. I think that would be kind of amazing, maybe. I
Yeah,
don't
that would actually have been pretty amazing, but
know. Yeah.
we did not go that route. Alas, uh, if you want a different picture of this giant, maybe with like a golden retriever in his palm,
Again, buy more Monster Mash,
buy
and then we
500
can.
copies of Monster
Yeah,
Match.
and then in the future we can have an entire panel where we all just sit here and talk about each offering in Monster Mash and how we feel about them, right? I think that sounds like a
We could
fantastic
talk
plan.
about who's on the box. We've
That's
got a
fair.
vampire, we've got a succubus, we've got our coral angel who is ready to play Wonderwall. Um, we've got an Athamaru down. Yeah, somebody is chat asked if that was an Athamaru. It is. You can barely see our genie on the side of the box, and we've got one of our favorites, Iago. The the how did you call him, Michelle?
I believe he is a Charnel creation.
His heart is up for grabs, and his liver and spleen may also be negotiable. Um,
That's
as
amazing. That's
somebody
amazing.
as somebody who's mixed race, I have an affinity for him because you would say he's extremely mixed race. Perhaps more notably so than other people, but I do like our goth charnel creation there. Uh, I think he's quite unique.
I think there's some pretty wonderful offerings in that game. So we've got a little bit of time left here, and I thought we'd dive into discussing a little bit about how you can use romance in actual RPGs on date nights. Have any of you ever just used an RPG for a date or furthering your relationship? Okay. So maybe I shouldn't have brought that up then. So I've done this panel a few times, and some of the other people that we've done it with always had this was always one of the topics. And the really cool thing about romance in RPGs that people often don't think about is we've talked a lot about bringing people to the table, and you've got a group and are your characters together in this. But RPGs can make a fantastic date night as well. Imagine if you are, in a relationship and you're like, I want to go on a date, but you can't afford to go to a fantasy ball or something like that. Guess where you can? You can do that in RPGs. So new ways to use RPGs are taking RPGs on dates. There's obviously should be consent is key in that as well. But we've had a lot of people in chat and otherwise asking us like, what do you do if you want to take it to the next level? Obviously, we don't recommend that for full groups, but if you want to take it to the next level, then I recommend taking your RPGs to your date night because writing an adventure for your romantic partner or your spouse can be very, very entertaining for both of you. And that's a fun thing that you can do there. Um, I think we're almost out of time with our panel. If there is another question or topic that any of you three would like to discuss while we're still here that we didn't get to, we've tried to ask most of the questions that are in our chat. I don't know if we've gotten them all, but we've certainly tried to get the bulk of them. Okay, someone wants to know if there will be Monster Match token packs. Do any of you know the
Oh,
answer to
that's
that?
not
Because
our
I certainly do
department.
not.
That's you gotta, let's see, token packs. You need to shake down Eric Mona, the publisher, or if you're looking for virtual token packs, you should. I mean, you could probably also still shake down Eric Mona, the publisher, but
I think that's a great idea, and we can just take that back to maybe our director of game design, Jason Bullman, and let him know that people would love token packs for Monster Match. Maybe we put that into a virtual space.
And guys, if you want a video game, make that known. Make that really, really known.
you make
Everybody
that
in the
known by
chat,
buying
shout
our
video
game.
Everybody in the chat, shout video game. I think that sounds amazing. That would be a wonderful video game. I would love to see us do a Monster Match in a Stardew Valley-esque style. I think that could be pretty amazing. We had somebody ask us a question about how you handle pregnancy in this type of situation. And I think, again, that the simple answer is simply you should take that back to your GM because we can't answer that for you.
There are
Many
no rules
questions
for
there.
that.
Yeah, there are no rules for that. That's a very sensitive and personal decision. I would say never inflict that on anybody without consent. I think that is all the questions that we have in here. I think we've gotten everybody. We would love to do a Monster Match convention, but I don't think we're going to be able to pull that off. PaizoCon is a lot of work for our staff, and we need some rest. And then we dive right into Gen Con, where conveniently you can come and play demos of our board games. So that's as good as it gets. All right. Well, we have really enjoyed spending time with everybody today. I know I've had a great time chatting with all of the wonderful people here in this panel and answering questions from the chat. I think that we are really excited to be bringing Monster Match and Romance out there into your game world. And we look forward to hearing how everybody plays it at the table and how much they enjoy the game in the future. Everybody say goodbye now.
Bye. Buy 7 copies, make 1 billion fan arts, go to Archive of
Yes.
Our Own and write fan fiction.
Fan art. Yes, please write fan art and fan fiction. I'm here to read that. Definitely send that to me. I may regret that request later, but
I want to see all of your trashy Gavin Next / fanfics. Put them on Archive of Our Own and upvote them 50 times.
That's amazing. I love it. All right.